the live stream. Give me just a moment, Dave, and we'll be ready.
Yeah. Okay, are you ready?
Here we go.
All right,
believe we're up and running.
the June 4th meeting of the Long Range Planning Committee. This is an exciting day for all of us, I think, to get this underway and pass it on. So our first agenda item, I guess we have minutes from 3 different meetings, so we'll take them one at a time. Any comment on the May 7th meeting minutes? Anybody?
No comments here.
All right, seeing none. Make a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, any last minute discussion?
I'm assuming that I'm voting as first alternate with
Actually, we have,
absent, or maybe we should just clarify that.
yep. So what we have, so Dave, Rick, Alan, Peter, and Marvin, who are all here, are the
Okay.
our members. Corey, you are the first alternate. Robin's not here. She would be the second alternate. And then liaisons are Jean Marie and Rachel and Don. So voting will be those first 5.
Okay, thanks for the clarification. The liaisons always trip me up.
Yep.
They trip everybody up.
Not literally, but thank
All
you.
right, Jay, you want to call the roll?
Sure,
or-
I'll run through it. Dave Merrill,
Aye.
Rick Cheney.
I am here.
How do you vote on the minutes?
Sorry, thought you were taking the roll call. I vote yes.
All right.
Approved.
Excellent. You're here and you vote yes. Excellent.
I'm here and
Alan
I'm voting.
Ball,
And multitasking, actually.
Approve.
Peter Frego,
Approve.
and Marvin Gates.
Approve.
All right.
All right, unanimous. All right, next up are the minutes of May 14th. Any comments?
Once again, I move to approve.
I'll second.
Second? All right, all in favor?
All right. Dave Merrill,
Aye.
Rick,
Rick looks
come
frozen.
back. I'll come back to Rick in a moment. Alan,
Approve.
Peter,
Approve.
Marvin,
Approve.
and Rick. Are you there?
Look.
I caught and approve, I believe.
Did you hear me? I froze as I said I approve.
We heard you now.
All right.
All right, and the last minutes are of May 26th. Any comments? I had one, just a question, Jay. It's in one of these minutes, it was mentioned that we update all the committee members and all the committees and all the various individuals that participated. Did that kind of make its way into the final plan that was posted? Do you recall?
So as I recall, that was on the first couple pages, and there was a couple that were out of order. I think Robin Saunders was still showing it. So if
Yeah.
that's the reference, then yes, that has all been updated. Yep.
I'll move to approve.
Move to approve? Yeah. Second?
Second.
All right.
All right. Dave,
Aye.
it's frozen again. We'll come back. Alan,
Abstain. I
Peter,
was not present.
fair enough.
Approve.
Marvin,
Approve.
all right. And Rick being frozen, I guess this is one of the odd ones. Should we have, I guess I don't really know what, there are really no good Robert's rules for Zoom here, so I'm not sure if we should have Corey vote on this, or if since we have 3 votes, we'll call that good.
Yeah.
I don't know what, oh, Rick's back. Save me. And you're muted at the moment, Rick.
He's got his thumb up.
I'm having some connection problems, but I approve the last set of minutes, whatever the last date.
Very good. Thank you.
All right, and moving on to item 2. Prepare recommendations of the comprehensive plan to the town council. So, Jay, do we,
Sure. Maybe just worth just reiterating that, just for the video and those who might be watching, as a reminder, the committee has spent, some years on this. And as recently as March 2020, actually prepared a recommendation. However, that was the week before the world shut down for quite a while. And after we came out of the sort of 6 or 8 months of quiet time, it felt like it was worth bringing the comp plan back to the public for another round of review and reminder of what's been going on. There was a host of public forums and a council workshop in the fall of 2020, which led to some last revisions and consideration coming out from the public comments and from council. So the committee then spent the months of January, February into March of 21, looking at the comments that came out of those public forums, making some adjustments. And then really March, maybe it's more April and May, the plan was actually sent to GPCOG, Greater Portland Council of Governments, to do really a copy edit review of the plan to really help smooth out some of the language. And they really didn't look at policy issues as really, again, around the copy editing piece. They also identified a few, red flagged a couple of missing pieces of materials that they knew the state would be very interested in seeing when it goes to the state review. So that's what happens after council adoption. And so that plan came back to us maybe a couple of weeks ago, a month ago, and now the committee has done its final review, and we had a meeting just last week, I think, to talk about any final edits with anticipation of a recommendation coming out of committee at this meeting. And then we can talk about what happens after you make your recommendation, if you're so inclined to do so today, I hope.
Jay, just a quick question. I know that Marvin had an extensive set of largely effectively copy edit comments, and we had a couple of very small comments that came out of the meeting last week. I'm assuming all those have been incorporated and they're all in?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
We went through and made those adjustments.
Great.
Again, none of those were really policy questions. They were really cleaning up language, but yep.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think, and I won't speak for the group, but I don't think we had anything material from a policy perspective come up in the last couple of weeks. It's all been just that last cleanup. So yeah, I just want to confirm that.
so do we have language for a formal recommendation, or what is our preferred method of ushering this on?
So I guess I haven't prepared like sort of a formal motion for the committee, but I think if someone were so inclined to make a formal recommendation of this draft of the committee, this draft of the comprehensive plan from the Long Range Planning Committee to Town Council for consideration of adoption would be sufficient. I don't know that it needs to be much more involved or evolved than that.
Hey, Jay,
Yes, sir.
I happen to have the 2006 plan in front of me. And it was a short but succinct cover letter that Sylvia Mose and I signed. I can't recall whether this was the letter that accompanied the plan to the council, or whether this was a letter that we put in the plan for public consumption after it was approved. But it's a pretty good letter in terms of a quick but succinct overview of what the committee had done.
Mhm.
And maybe something along those lines would be good to put together, and then it could be signed by the chair. If you don't have this handy, I can send it to you.
You know, we have that, and actually Karen and I have started to draft a letter, just a memo that does give an overview to council, that really just highlights process, and then, you know, probably highlight what's changed in the last couple months, just to give that quick overview.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I think I remember reading that letter, Rick, that you're referencing in the 06 plan, and I wasn't around at the time, but it seems like it wasn't after the plan recommendation letter, as I recall, but it has been a little while since I looked at it.
Yeah, the plan was actually adopted on July 19, 2006, and that cover letter is just dated July 2006. So I suspect it was post council approval and was put in, but anyway.
I guess I'd ask Don, do you from a town council perspective expect or need anything more than a motion and a vote to approve the recommendation from the committee, or?
Yeah, I think officially, formally, no, but as a practical matter, yes. I've sent some notes to Jay on this. I know Jay kind of reached out to the council on it. My major issue at this point in time is we need some guidance from from this committee, if possible, to help us understand, you know, what this is and how to use it. And I'm thinking primarily from the standpoint of how to read it. And the big issue that I'm having as a counselor, and this is maybe just me and not representative of everybody, but I'm having a hard time going through the document and explaining what to look for, and also trying to tee up for the public what to look for. We probably don't want them, probably definitely don't want them going through the kind of line item review that we've done, but I think it's going to be important to explain to them what we've done, what we think we've accomplished, and then how this will be used. So I think there's got to be some sort of like a little bit of a train the trainer at a high level just for the council, so we can help lead the public through it. Right now, I have a hard time trying to say this section is strategies, this section are initiatives, this section are implementation plans. So I just, and I don't think this is a long explanation, but something like that from the committee, particularly from the planners, I think, from the technical side, and then folks that have done this before, like Rick and Rachel, would be very helpful. That's kind of a long run for a short slide, but that's kind of where I'm seeking additional help. And I don't know if it's going to come from this meeting, but sometime between now and, when we really get into the workshops and stuff, we'll really have to have a better grasp on that.
I guess I would say that we are fulfilling our duty to the state regulations to put this plan forward, and fulfilling our obligation to passing it on to the council for their review. To get into the specifics of it, I guess, there's a short description of the objectives. But those are really set out in the fulfillment of our obligations to the state comprehensive plan guidelines.
Right. So let me just respond to that, Dave. I agree with that completely. But if really all we're really focused on at this point is the formal acceptance and checking the box that we've kind of done the tasks, that's a very different sort of thing in terms of what we need to do to explain and reassure the public that this is in keeping with what we did in 2006, which I believe it is, and I'm fully capable to speak to that. But if I go through the thing, if I'm going to try to be walking somebody through the document, I'd have a hard time doing that today, in spite of all the meetings I've attended. So, and that's not the thing, that may be on me, not on the committee, but that's something, and maybe something that I can deal with separately with Jay and maybe Jean Marie, so we can kind of help shepherd that. I don't expect the committee to do that, but that's something I'd like to be able to do to help the council, help the public is sort of how I'm looking at it. So, because it is, I feel very confident that this fulfills completely the regulatory requirements. I also believe that it is a very different document than the one we had last time around, and all of our work definitely shows. I just want to be able to be in the best position to, in a clear way, articulate that. And maybe that's just some quiet time that I need by myself, with help from Jay and possibly Tom Hall, I think. And one or two other counselors. I think probably Jean Marie and I are closest to this, than the rest of the council. So anyway, that may be my lamentation, but that's the one thing I need. I need to get straight in my mind. And I can give you an example of it. I can give an example right now to illustrate it, but that's kind of where I am on it. I don't believe it should hold up where we are in terms of approval and what needs to be done officially committee-wise today.
So in terms of that, Don, that's certainly something I think we can add into our cover letter that sort of will accompany the plan to the council. Just, I was really going to talk about just a little bit of the history of the process. Again, I don't want to have too long of a memo that because the comp plan speaks to all this stuff. So a little bit of the process, where we've been, how we got here, and what the expectation of council is. But I can also speak to, we can add a paragraph or two to really talk about the flow of the plan. I think, I know someone else had asked me before, like, so what areas of the plan should I focus on? I find that to be a hard question, because really we talk about the plan, sort of everything connecting. So it's almost as though you have to take it as a whole, but I think we can certainly talk about, the plan does sort of structure as though, the first little bit is really sort of the where we've been and, the demographics and the data. And then we move into sort of land use considerations. And then we move into, the other policy recommendations and wrap up with an implementation sort of, for those that are probably most interested, starting with that, the second half of the plan really speaks more to what are we doing next, right?
Yeah. That captures it. I think it's next steps, kind of what has been done so far, and then what do we do from here going on. And this does get into the weeds, start to get into the weeds a little bit in terms of now we pick up with the driving success part, the implementation plans. This is a high level implementation plan. It's sort of a, it's going to require further detailing and, will be revised upon implementation like any plan. There will be stuff added to it or updated or whatever, but I think everything is there. It's absolutely the question of the handoff, number one, and also who's going to do it. And this does, I think, get into the category of the role of the planning department, the role of this committee, the role of the council, helping the public to understand it and guide and direct it. So I think that, there is no comp plan implementation committee this time around. We're doing it goes straight to the long range planning committee. So, that's something that's different. So that, I think those sort of things, particularly for the folks that were there at the very beginning, having them help us, understand, where we are in the map and then who needs to do what next.
I think the long range planning committee is the successor, of course, to the comprehensive plan implementation committee from 2006. So I think we're effectively functioning in that role, and presumably we'll have some responsibility for implementing anything coming out of this plan as well. So, unless the council wants to form yet another committee, but
no, absolutely not. We have plenty of committees. We've done a lot of work with ad hoc committees. I don't think there's a soul, and I feel very confident about this, I would say, let's create another committee. And that's not a negative, that's a positive. I think the work that was done the first time around is a great guide for what, and you folks, a couple of folks on the committee, can help to ensure that continuity as you have in the work to this point. So there's things like that I just want to be able to reassure the public, because we are going to get it. It's been so busy with so many big initiatives, the growth management ordinance and other things. So we're waiting our way through these gradually. The big ad hoc committees will also be reporting out in the next 30 to 45 days. So I just want to make sure we were helping the people keep, tell the pit, who were the players from the program and the timing.
It may be worth a quick look at our charter to see how that is currently structured as compared to, I know we changed it after the implementation committee kind of transitioned into the long-range planning. So if there was a charter change at that point, it may be worth just understanding that for guidance going forward with the council.
Good point. Yeah, I can't quote that off the top of my head, but thank you, Dave.
Go ahead, Peter.
I'll let Rachel go first. I think she raised her hand first, so.
Yep, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to reinforce that we need to leave this meeting with a recommendation to the council, which is kind of easy to forget that we've got to do in all discussion. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing, I guess that our role is to provide the council with the tools it needs to lead the public hearings. And that's what we're starting. I think that's next before we get into what do we do next once the plan is passed. And I hear Don's concern about making sure that the council has the material to provide the leadership for those hearings.
And actually, interesting, I'd make the exact same points. And actually, I think what I hear from Don and what I hear from some of the other conversation really is two things. One is I think we're ready to move to approve approve a recommendation that the council take up the plan in its current form for approval. Number one. And then number two, we could then recommend that town staff, Jay, Karen, everyone, put together a 10 or 15 minute presentation to guide the workshop and help the town council manage the workshop process with sort of a lead-in implementation guide. And that I think will help guide the conversation on the 16th as well. So Dave, if you agree with that, I'd be happy to move for that recommendation for approval.
Yeah, I just want to say, I think the first 10 pages of this document kind of are the structure for what everybody's describing, how to use the plan, what the plan is here for. So maybe just culling out the highlights of how this plan, why it's necessary, what it's for, and how to use it, or, kind of those core points that just need to be maybe brought to the cover letter or perhaps a short presentation. So, Marvin?
Thanks, Dave. I don't have anything that's going to prevent me from whatever the proper word is here, approve this to send to council. You have raised, the point has been raised, that's been the one concern I have going forward, and that is the implementation. I have no idea what that is going to entail, and I would feel a great deal more comfortable proving this, having in the pipeline something coming to me to describe what the implementation process from this committee's point of view and the committee members' point of view will be. And the idea of the charter, Dave, would be great. I should be able to dig that out myself, but Jay, is it possible that that could be sent around to all the committee members? And also, just if in 30 seconds or a minute at most, someone with the experience could describe what a simple implementation process item would be for us going forward, it would help me a great deal in understanding and not feeling as though I'm going into this approval totally blind as far as what it means to myself as a committee member going forward, vis-a-vis the implementation process.
So, Marvin, maybe I can try to take the first crack at sort of what the next step is once and if council adopts this plan is really what I would foresee happening, and the way, and I certainly we can send the ordinance around that talks about the long range planning committee's role. I would see the first thing we're going to do is probably spend a few months deconstructing the plan, figuring out all the recommendations that are in there, which where where the town sees who the appropriate lead would be for each of those items. And then trying to figure out then working with council priorities, right? Because not everything can happen in the first year or even 5 years. A lot of these things require a further study, additional study, a lot of town resources in terms of staff time, potential consultant assistance, just capacity to deal with a large range of things. But certainly I would see, like I said, sort of deconstructing and saying, hey, maybe a climate action plan is something we have sustainability and conservation really take the lead on. Transportation type issues, move that over to transportation committee. So I really see the first few months as being that deconstruction piece, and then working with other committees and obviously council to prioritize and figure out how these pieces are going to fit together. So I think it's going to be, I guess that's the quick answer.
Corey?
Yeah, I have a follow-up just quickly. Jay, if I'm understanding you off the top of my head, it's sort of, we're the traffic cop, and we're telling, you go this way, you go that way, we'll handle this, something like that. Am I in the ballpark of understanding what you just said?
Yes, with council's guidance.
Sure.
I think, again, council, has a lot on their plate, things are always coming to them that need, every 2 weeks, they have actionable items they've got to move to keep the town's business going. And so I think that's what committees are here to do, is to then make recommendations. So again, I think there'll be some time for this committee to break down the plan and then send yet another recommendation to council, say, okay, we broke down the plan, this is how we see it. And then council obviously needs to help craft those priorities, and that is ultimately their prerogative and their role. Your role is as advisory to council.
Sure, I get that. And that's why I think it's very helpful. Forgive me for, this is my last comment. I think it's very helpful, Don, for you to have said what you said, because you're council and you're coming to us and asking for guidance. And going forward, that's sort of how I understand our role to be. Obviously, the council is the council and has all of the authority. Okay, thanks.
Corey's been
Yes.
trying-
I would think a traditional way to handle this is that the council provides the long-range planning committee with the charge. In other words, from the council's perspective, what becomes our role? How do we best help it? And if it would like us to give it some sort of a schemata, like Jay was talking about, that's something that we could do if that's what the council wants. So it's kind of then in the ballpark of the council to provide us with the charge for our next set of activities.
Okay,
I actually don't think that's quite the way this will work or should work. I think Dave and I are the only holdovers from the 2006 committee. Back then, there was no long-range planning committee. The committee that worked on the comp plan was unique to that function. But we recommended, as part of that plan, that an implementation committee be formed to deal with a number of zoning changes and the like that plan recommended be put in place. And I remember that Doug McCune, and Dave, you can help me on this, but Doug did a pretty extensive post-adoption summary of all of the things that were set forth in the plan that needed to be implemented, so to speak, most of which were zoning changes, but there were some other things. And out of that adoption, the comprehensive plan implementation committee was formed, and it included some, but not all, of the members of the comp plan committee. And then, as most of you I think know, the council eventually said, we need a long-range planning committee. And the logical committee to take on that function was the comprehensive plan implementation committee. So the implementation committee disappeared and was subsumed by the long range planning committee. And that committee has functioned in that capacity ever since. So what I see happening here is, number one, we present this to the council and tell them what we've done and recommend approval. They have the public hearings. Maybe there are some changes, maybe there aren't. They adopt it. And then we move ahead, as Jay has suggested, with, deconstructing the plan in terms of things that need to be put in place to implement the recommendations of the plan. So the committee will continue, as I see it, to function as the implementing body for anything in the plan that is recommended be changed or put in place or what have you, which seems consistent with our charge. If you look at the website and click on the Long Range Planning Committee link, the summary of what we do, at least it's there publicly, seems consistent with all that. So I guess that's how I see it.
Yeah, I'll add one thing. I think we're a step ahead there because, as you say, Doug put that matrix together after the plan was approved. In this case, Jay and Karen have already done that in the last chapter of our current draft, which sets out all the various implementation points. There may be that need, the first point of the first work order is to go through that and see if there's anything that needs to be added or edited along through those matrices. But I mean, I think we're a step ahead. That matrix is done at this point. I know Corey was trying to get in there a few minutes ago. Corey, did you?
Oh, yeah, just briefly, and I don't need to belabor anything. And I think points that were made, including by Rick, were definitely helpful. But just on the question of implementation, obviously, as has been discussed previously, unlike the previous plan, a lot of the sort of action and follow through items are sort of bigger picture and longer term, longer range. So it's not like, as Rick alluded to, sort of the zoning changes or zoning repairs that came out of the previous plan. So, it's not going to lend itself to a simple one-page bullet point list of tasks. So I think that deconstruction idea makes a lot of sense. And then my other point is just more of a point of order that we should make sure we actually get something approved before Rick has to leave.
Okay.
Yeah, and then on that one, Dave, I'm happy to move that we approve or that we recommend that the town council accept the plan in its current form and move forward with the adoption of a new plan.
Concur. I'd like to do, yeah, before Rick has to depart here, we'd get everybody's all our votes in order here. Don, did you have your hands up? Did you want?
No, I support that. I don't want to stand in the way of that. I had a comment before we move to the next agenda item, but I'm fine with the discussion. And, I just have an example of what I think we're going to be seeing once we were going live with this next Wednesday. Okay. We're beginning with a public hearing and a first reading on the comp plan on Wednesday, June 9th. So between now and then, I just think that it'll be important for us to replay some of the things that were discussed here, and I feel very confident Jay and I with Jean Marie can do that, tee up for the council, and then we go on from there. But people will be searching for their own little pet project, and they'll be firing that right at us. I'm predicting, as soon as Wednesday. So, I just maybe kind of a narrow special need of mine, but I feel confident we'll be in a position to field those and to redirect according to the discussion we've had here in terms of roles and that of the committee and the process. Thank you.
Okay.
David, I second Peter's motion.
Great. Okay, that's what I was looking for. Okay. Any last minute discussion? So shall we vote?
Okay, I will call the roll. Let's see, Dave,
Aye, approve.
Rick,
Enthusiastically, yes.
Alan,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
and Marvin.
Yes.
All right, wonderful. We have a recommendation unanimously coming out of committee to council. Good
Excellent.
deal.
Where's
Congratulations.
the champagne?
That comes after adoption, Alan.
All right.
Still got another process.
Okay. Dave, do you want to let Coy, for the record, say his, whether he supports the plan, just so it's in the minutes?
As the first alternate? Yeah.
I fully support it. Thank you.
All right, our next,
We have Rachel and Don as liaisons weigh in as well, just to,
I fully support it.
Yeah, I support this and will support it energetically in the weeks ahead. Thank you and beyond. Thanks. Great work.
thank you all. Next item, review adoption process and meeting dates.
sure. So this gets into a little bit of what we were just talking about. So I've started a conversation with council leadership and with Tom Hall about what they're really going to be looking for in terms of an overview. As you remember, back in the fall, we did a very extensive and in-depth presentation that we actually turned into the video that really went through the policies and a lot of the issues with the plan. I think at this point, I think, Peter, you mentioned it, really looking at what I'm hearing is much like we were talking about, to touch on what's in the plan, but probably not quite as deep a dive this time because we have that presentation people can go see. Touch on how we got to where we are, what the process has been, talk about what those changes have been since the fall to now, and then really talk about sort of what the future might look like and what happens once and after implementation. So I think at the first meeting, the presentation will probably be a little bit more in depth because the first meeting being next Wednesday, that's the only item on the agenda. And that's the first real kickoff public hearing, first reading, if you will, with the council process. So that might be a little bit more in depth. And then as the meetings go on, the presentation will probably get a little bit shorter. Just again, folks will have opportunity to review materials on the website and such, and to be able to move forward. So just to touch on, the meetings are the first one, June 9th, starting at 6 p.m. That's the only item on that agenda. Then, and that I said at 6 p.m., I think I already said that. Then the following Wednesday, June 16th, will be a public hearing, and that one begins at 7 p.m. I believe will be part of council's regular agenda, and the planning board will be part of that process as well. And then June 30th is the hopeful adoption date by council, assuming we're on track here. And that will be at 6 p.m. As well. So those are the dates.
How are these meetings being held? Do you know?
Thank you. I knew there was something else that I wanted to touch on. So evolving rapidly. However, let's focus on the 9th. I talked to Tom about that. Council is starting, or has been, it's going to be a hybrid meeting. Talking with Tom, his sense is that it'd be best to have most of the committee probably Zoom in like this, because trying to get this, council and the committee all around the table, he really felt we'd be quite spread out, and actually felt like this process enables everyone to be sort of more involved, if you will, was the sense. In talking with Tom, we sort of talked about how it'd be good probably have at least, Dave, if you're available, the chair in the room, if not one other committee member. And then, like I said, others sort of zooming in virtually. And then I think we'll have to see how subsequent weeks sort of roll out. I think policies are shifting rapidly, as we are all aware. So that's the direction for the first one. We might assume that could be what the others look like as well, but always, as we all have been over the last year, be prepared to be flexible.
Hey, Peter?
You're muted, Peter. Yep, there you
Just procedurally, and maybe Don, you can add some color to this one. I would expect the 16th to be the kind of the big discussion section, and the 9th to be more of a here's what we're going to do and get ready for it. So, and I say this selfishly because I've got a zoning board meeting that I'm on next Wednesday, so I'm just trying to manage my attendance. If I can't make it next week, I'm definitely going to be there the 16th. Is that okay? Or will I miss something big next week?
No, I think that as you described, that's exactly our expectation for the first round. Public hearing, and the first reading, and that the big back and forth will be at the workshop and the joint session. It's hard for me to anticipate what the response is going to be, but what I've been seeing lately in issues is we had people ranging from asking for broad statements like resolutions, but then all of a sudden veering toward offering very specific revisions. I cannot rule out the possibility of there being specific revisions, but I do not believe the council has a big appetite for the latter. Given the amount of work we put into this and the process that we followed. And if you were to take these two documents, the one that we talked about right on the eve of COVID and this one, these are entirely different bodies of work that built upon the same raw material. So I think that, the product hopefully will speak for itself, but I cannot rule out, you're still going to have one or two people that say, now 30%, of all development needs to be open space. Everybody has kind of their own little issue, and which we're likely to hear from. But let's hope for the best and plan for something less than that. Thank you.
It can always be amended after the fact as well, Don. So,
Yeah.
I mean, if it's something that really needs to be accomplished and somehow was not part of the original plan, and there is the ability to amend the document after it's been approved.
Great. I probably would not lead off with that statement when I introduce it next week, but good to know that we could have that flexibility and we'll manage that. But thank you. Very, very well put.
And certainly one of the things I plan on touching on and just sort of letting everyone know, and this committee should know as well, this plan does, as I said, after we adopt it locally, we've talked about how the state then needs to do a review and adoption. The state may very well come back with, as Rick just sort of choked there, the state is likely to may well come back with comments and look for, their sort of particular checklist of items. Staff's certainly going to go through that and try to answer up as much as we can to the state. But it may be that there's some additional, to your point, Alan, there may be some additional action needed, later in the summer, and probably, honestly, if we're getting this, into the fall, once we hear back from the state. And a lot of times what we also see, and I won't go into all this necessarily unless asked, with that state is the state will respond back, and then the town will go through those comments and then respond back to the state to say, well, did you see this? Or this is our interpretation of how we were addressing that issue. And the state may then be satisfied. They're like, oh, okay, we get it now. Anyway, for what that's worth.
Hey, does it make sense to run this by the state first before the council considers it?
It makes a ton of sense if they would do that. But the state is not inclined to do that.
I see. They want
the
local council selectmen.
They send it out to all the various departments, and they send it all around. So they don't want to be reviewing something and then the town say, actually, you know what, we didn't mean that whole thing. So yeah, it's
so the actual action of the council will be, if they adopt it subject to review by the state.
I would say this then becomes our locally adopted plan. So June 30th, presumably it would become our locally adopted plan. It's not yet a approved state consistent plan.
I see.
So it will become our plan of record on June 31 or whatever the case may be. June 31, that's not a date.
No.
July 1.
30 days, have September, April, June.
I'm trying to add summer days here.
Indeed.
So on July 1, it will become our effective plan. It just still won't be considered state consistent. But we're obviously, that's just a process every town needs to go through.
So there
And,
is the
and-
possibility that after the council adopts the plan, the DEP, or, I mean, the planning, whatever, comes back and says, we don't like this, we don't like that, blah, 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 blah. Okay.
And just to add, I was going to, folks who participated in the GP COGS meeting probably got this, but they've been tracking similar comprehensive plans through this process, this precise process. And so they've been helping us in their edits to make sure that we've been ticking off on the things that the state will be looking at. So we should be in good shape. I don't want to say, perfect, but this has been part of their help with our review on this and revision.
Marvin, I think you had your hand up a minute ago. Yeah.
I did. Don, you mentioned you have a specific example of something, maybe you've already discussed it as far as how you might see this unfold in the next month before we get to the idea of the state approval. And in this forum at this moment, I'd love to hear that, or like to hear that example. And then,
So thank you, Marvin. I can take just a minute on that. I tend to think of things in terms of strategies, initiatives, and plans. So this is not necessarily how everybody looks at strategic plans, comprehensive plans. So if I were to use those things, I would have a hard time saying with our taxonomy of the pieces here, what are strategies, what are initiatives, what are plans? The implementation plan part is pretty easy. I think the high level stuff is, but we have principles and we have values. It's just going to be important, I think, for us to be clear as walking through this, what level are we at with the plan? So this is just something to help me explain to the public, here's how to look at it. That will not rule out people looking for their own pet project, but that's the sort of thing that will help me. And I just noticed some of these things, like when I jump back and forth with the headings and that sort of thing, I kind of lose my place when I'm going through, how to follow. I mean, I use marine resources as an example. You could use the library as another one. I think people ultimately are going to jump to the implementation plan and see, is my plan in there? The stuff that I wanted, is that in the implementation plan? And also, where is it as I follow it through from strategy? Marine resources falls in there along with the resiliency section of it. So it's all in there. I feel comfortable that it's in there, but I don't have a clear, rule of battle on the thing if I were to explain it to somebody else. So that's just something that, Jay, maybe you and Tom and I can work through. So I'd like to, and also help the council get their head around it, as they'll be getting similar questions as well, individually from the public.
Okay, Alan, you've been patient. Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of follow up a little bit with what Don was saying prior to this last statement. But if I'm not mistaken, when Vanessa from GP COG came to us and presented to us, I thought that she also said that she physically had the state checklist of all the things that they're going to go through and look for. And I thought at that time we had kind of indicated, or I don't know if she was going to do this or not, but wasn't there some thought of actually going through their checklist and indicating where in the plan we actually met that requirement? Is that still something we're going to do when we submit to the state?
Yep, that's something that we've been working on sort of throughout. And so really, again, once we submit it to the state to help spoon feed them, how do we meet your checklist? Here's where it is. So, yep, that's something staff is working on and we'll have fully prepared by the end of this month. Again, in anticipation of sending this off to the state in early July.
Yeah, so I mean, that should kind of help us, or should mostly help us in terms of comments coming back from the state that may have to be addressed. We might be able to set that one aside before we even send it.
Yeah. I recall that conversation too, Alan, and that was very helpful to hear that we were already kind of getting the inside baseball on what we needed to get this approved. I think she also mentioned that anything could happen and that any person from the DEP or whatever could add a comment, but I think we it was very reassuring to know that we had access to that list and that we could prepare that sort of, you're looking for X, here it is at point A
Correct.
list for them. So
Correct, yeah.
But Jay, I have to bail.
Okay, great, great.
Have a nice weekend, everybody.
Thank you. Congratulations.
You too, Rick.
All right. Any further questions on process?
I have one question, and that is, and if I'm skipping ahead, just tell me. Next meetings are all of the public meetings. Is this committee have any space to meet if we need to? When is our next meeting? Please remind me. And if during this month-long process, I don't know, I'm imagining some serious questions that the committee should address. Are we prepared to be able to meet those during this process and or answer those questions and meet if necessary?
So Marvin, I'll give a shot at it, and then Don, certainly please, let me know if I'm going astray here. But at this point, the committee's made your recommendation. You've heard from the public through multiple iterations back from the 2018 draft, the 2019 draft, the 2020 draft. So there's been 3 public rounds of comments. So it's, at this point, you're making your recommendation, feeling as though you've done your exhaustive review. Hopefully you feel that way, of public comment. There may be more that comes up. And certainly if there are things that come up and council feels that they are seeking further guidance from this committee, I would expect maybe that would come out of the public hearings. Again, I think the 9th is really more of an introduction public hearing. Certainly good comments from the public could come out of that. I would think if anything comes out of the 9th, would also be discussed at the 16th. And that would really be where council would say, yes, we should do X, Y, and Z, or, item A, I'm not really sure what we should do with that. Hey, Long Rangers, can you take that one up? And that may, impact the timeline that we have laid out. The anticipation and the hope is that the work that this committee has done through the public engagement process and reiteration and the most recent work that you've done has flushed out all the public comment. As Don said, there's always going to be folks who, when something is, every time I read the plan, I see something else I think of, right? And I think that's going to always be the case with a document that touches upon everything. So at this point, I would say I'm not anticipating this committee having to get together, but we should remain flexible and be prepared that maybe, following the 16th, we need to rally a meeting together. We'll see how that progresses. That's my thought on it. And I did hear at the last meeting, if this adoption process goes as we're anticipating, maybe we take the month of July and give ourselves a small pat on the back and re-engage in August. But that's what I recall hearing from the last meeting. And so.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you, Jay.
There are a couple Fridays in between the 16th and the 30th if we absolutely needed to. But I'd hopefully not.
Jay, though, also, as I understand it, the 9th is really a town council meeting, but the 16th is a joint meeting of the town council and the long range planning committee. So if those issues come up and the town council wants our advice and guidance, we can give that in real time on the 16th as these issues come up. So
absolutely.
So that is a meeting, quote unquote, for us. And we're there to provide an advisory capacity to the council as it considers the issues that might come up.
I just to be clear, so the 9th is actually a joint public hearing of this.
It is as well. Okay. Got it.
Yep.
Okay.
And the 16th is a joint public hearing of planning board, long range planning and council.
Okay.
And then June 30th, we start with a joint public hearing of long range and council. Presumably what's going to happen at particularly the last public hearing, right? That'll just be a public hearing, which is sort of state required public hearing. We'll have already hopefully heard things. We'll see what happens on 30th, but presumably we'll open the public hearing, hear public comments, then council will close the public hearing, and then council will sort of take up the action, and long rangers will step back once the public hearing is closed. It will then move into a council discussion on adoption.
That's helpful, Jay. But it's also good to note too, and I think you mentioned this, having approved the motion to recommend to the council, it's now in council's hands essentially.
Yeah, you've done your work.
Yeah, got it.
Again, if they see that they're seeking more recommendation from you, that's their prerogative. We serve at their pleasure.
That's a lot of public hearing.
Yeah, it's a lot of public hearing, but it's also, I think it's just consistent with what we've done in terms of this process. We've amended where need be to do the right thing, and we're just trying to follow through on that. So yeah, I can't promise there won't be any revisions, but I think we're in good shape leading off here. Thanks.
Yeah, no, I just want to echo on that. I know one of the thoughts of sort of these 3 public hearings is really to sort of more or less mimic what council does when they adopt an ordinance, right? They do a first reading, public hearing, second reading. So though this process doesn't require that, council wanted to layer in that additional review. One of the things I think back to, and I think we should all be pretty pleased with, is I remember back in the fall, winter, council was sort of talking about, great, once we get this back from Long Range Planning Committee, we're going to embark on another 6-month, 8-month public outreach process. There was that kind of discussion happening, but I think council has seen and heard from, participating in those public forums in the fall, seeing sort of the changes that this committee has committed to based on that recommendation, I think has given council, and again, Don, if I'm astray, certainly correct me, but has given the council a greater sense of or appreciation and comfort level, I think is what I'm looking for, that really public process has been pretty robust here, very robust here, and that we'll see what comes in the next 3 meetings.
Yeah, we're just in general. Sorry, go ahead, Rachel. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask Jay and Jamel if they would be willing at the planning board meeting on Monday to outline the expectations of the role of the planning board in that June 16th meeting.
Yes, I fully anticipate I can do that on Monday and send along an email that sort of echoes those things. Yep.
Rachel, this is another thing that's a little ways down the road, but that brings to mind a thought that crossed earlier, which is that another kind of longer range implementation consideration, if you will, that I assume you'll play a role in, will be helping the planning board to understand how the comp plan, what the comp plan means within the context of its role and review proposals and doing site plan review and so forth. Because I know, when I was on the board, periodically there would be applicants who would come in and they would be making reference to the comp plan, and members of the public would make reference to the comp plan, either pro or con. So I think it'll be helpful for the planning board to hopefully get an understanding of what it is and what it isn't, and sort of how that works as a framework.
Yeah, Corey, I appreciate that. I think that's kind of along the line of how I was thinking of going, and I was not just that the planning board needs to read the comp plan, but to perhaps go to with the planning board a workshop that with the planning that, and perhaps Karen could join us, that talks about where the planning board fits, what the role is, how to view the plan. That would be one of the steps we would take.
Don, did you have something in there that you wanted to?
Just going to say, just from a process standpoint, the one thing that we have tried to do, we've done a lot of this, is more work is being done in committee now than we used to do in the past. A lot of stuff used to come up at, in front of council in first reading, but there's a lot more work that's being done by committees and also with input from the public to committees. So we're just, trying to make sure that when it finally comes to the council that there's, been a good run up for that, and people can't complain, can't state or claim that we haven't really involved the public. We've involved the public, and people are getting much more involved in a much more, in a meaningful way. So, but it's not easy for the average person maybe tracking one issue to follow that all the way through. So that's just something we're doing a lot more of. We add workshops. We've added public comment at workshops. So we will continue to do this, to the extent manageable, to accommodate the public when they feel there's an issue we're not hearing or listening to.
Okay. Any lingering questions? All right. Seeing no heads bobbing. We have one member out there in public comment. Does Allison have anything to say?
I see a hand up. I'll bring Miss Bristol in.
Good morning, everybody. I just wanted to say thank you for making the adjustment to the description of the villages. Every little bit helps, as we try to retain the quaint residential neighborhood that we have here. That's how the town promotes Higgins Beach, as being a quaint residential neighborhood. And, the kind of intangible quality that's down here in terms of, what our lifestyle is and how everyone enjoys the beach is very important. So I thank you for making that adjustment. And, hopefully things will remain, the quaint residential neighborhood that it is. And I thank everybody for their hard work on this. And it's been very informative to listen in on the meetings, and I've really enjoyed it. So thanks again.
Thanks for all your feedback, Allison.
Thank you, Allison.
Alan?
Yeah, this is kind of like public comment, but also a brief update on the Transportation Committee. I would encourage you all to go on to the town's website, go under the Transportation Committee, and bring up the video from our last meeting. There is pretty much at the very beginning of the meeting, we brought in a representation or a representative from the Eastern Trail Committee. And he spent a considerable amount of time going over each aspect of the new piece of the Eastern Trail that hopefully is going to start construction in about 6 to 8 months and probably go for about 2 years. So if you're interested in what's going on with the Eastern Trail, that was a really good explanation of where the trail will be, where the trail is at this point, and it'll just give you some great information about it. The second thing I wanted to say, and this is more of a personal comment, I guess, so probably goes here, want to encourage each and every one of you to get out to vote on June 15th. My understanding is that there's been a very low turnout in terms of absentee ballots that have been taken at this point, which is highly unusual for the town of Scarborough. I think something like 60% of all votes from last November were absentee. So to see the numbers down at this point is really, I don't want to say discouraging, but a lot of hard work went into the budget process. And I think it's important that we try to get as many people out there to express their opinion on election day about it. So encourage you to tell your friends, your neighbors, and everybody else to get out and vote so that we have a vote that's representative of a larger percentage of the town as opposed to what might potentially be a very small percentage. Thanks.
Thanks, Alan. Any closing comments? All right, motion,
Motion to
Move to
adjourn. sir.
adjourn.
and looks like we've got both a second there too, so. Right. All right, well, I guess we'll look forward, Jay, give some guidance to what you need on Wednesday night by email, I guess.
I will do that.
Those
Yep.
that can participate or by Zoom or however we need to attend.
Yep.
Great. All in favor of concluding our meeting today? I guess show of hands.
Works for me on an adjournment.
Thank you all.
Congratulations, everyone. That was first
Yeah,
first
thank
lap
you,
step.
Thanks, everyone.
Well done.
Congrats,
Right.
Jay.